Alright, so I got this Chevy, I think it's an Equinox here. Owner dropped it off because it's overheating. He said, here, put a thermostat on it. I told him, hey, I could slap this on, but if it doesn't fix the problem, don't come blaming me, because I didn't say it needs a thermostat. So he said, fine, go ahead, look at it. Took the cap off the radiator. The radiator, it looks empty. I look down inside of there, I barely see any coolant. Okay, so clearly we have coolant leaking out somewhere. First thing I notice is this hose right here looks a bit swollen, and it looks like moist around the edges, like it's just been leaking. So I started pressurizing the system, as you could see, and we could already see signs of it leaking. See that? I don't know where this came from, but we got that over there. And in fact, we got green coolant here, and that over there is not green coolant. So I don't know how or what. Why do we have two different color coolants? Nice when the owner comes to drop off the car. This is what's sitting here. And just by looking at him, I could tell he's been drinking. Alright, so it looks like the green coolant is leaking off of this SUV. I think the owner tried, because he did say he added coolant, but he added the green stuff, and this thing has Dexcool in it. So already he's mixing fluids, okay? So as you can see, I got the wheel off, and I looked up here as closely as I can. Honestly, it looks like the water pump leaking. See right up there, right above the belt, I believe that's the water pump, and you can see right off the bottom of that, nice and wet, working its way all the way down. So yeah, let's just go here, put a thermostat on it. The car is overheating. It'll be fine, right? So on this Chevy Traverse, it's the next day, and not only did the owner put the wrong coolant in it, but looking at the viscosity of this, I don't know, it kind of looks like concentrate. I know it's hard to tell, but if you've been messing with antifreeze for a while, you could tell a difference. Okay, I could tell a difference between a concentrated coolant and something that's been diluted already. And the way this is flowing, it has like a thicker viscosity. Okay, all right, so I got out the old water pump. It would sit like this, so it was leaking right out the bottom. And it wasn't so much that the pump failed, it was more like a gasket failure, because that's where it was leaking from. So you can see the owner brought me a replacement pump. It looked like he went to AutoZone. Get in the zone! So from what I see online, there's two ways of doing this job. You could come from the top how I did, or you could come from the bottom. The difference is going from the bottom looks like less work, but you have less space to work with the water pump. At least that's what it looks like to me. When you come from the top, you have to take apart all of this junk that's in the way right here. You can see I got the whole fuse box right there. So it's more work, but when you actually get to the water pump, you have a bit more space to work with. And I prefer the extra space to work with the water pump and make sure I could do a good job and everything's perfect and it's gonna seal, rather than coming from the bottom. I get to the pump faster, but I got to work with all these space constraints, and I have a more difficult time installing or removing the water pump. And then if it were to leak because I couldn't get in there right, and I somehow nicked the gasket or whatever, something stupid, right? So if I had to do this all over again, I would still do it this way. Alright, so I'm just about done here. You can see the new water pump is installed, and the new pump was supplied with new bolts. That's why those bolts all look new. And of course, you got to make sure you torque them down to spec in inch pounds. So I already went ahead and did that, and I triple checked everything, just making sure that the torque spec is on point. The gasket mating surface, I just made sure that everything was like super clean and nothing of the old gasket was left behind. So I think it's going to be a successful repair. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and reconnect this hose, because it's the only one I have to reconnect. I'm going to start putting Dexcool in the system, and I'm actually going to pressurize the system right now before I put all this stuff together to make sure we don't have a leak. As far as the green stuff, it looks like all the owner did was pour the green stuff into the overflow tank. I don't think much of it made its way into the actual engine or the radiator, if any at all, because everything that came out the engine when I drained the water pump was all Dexcool. Alright, so I'm going to make sure to drain that overflow tank, and the whole system is going to get filled with Dexcool, and then I'm going to pressurize it right now. So I got the system filled with Dexcool, and I got it pressurized. That's exactly where it went up to. And so far the needle is not dropping. And I even got my mirror inside of here. See it down there? I'm just looking, well, you guys aren't going to be able to see this, but I was just down here looking at the bottom of the water pump. I don't see anything dripping or seeping out or anything, so that's a good sign. Just going to give it a few more minutes, and I'm actually going to pressurize it even more. I'm going to get right up to that red line and let it sit right there for a few minutes. So it's been a few minutes, and we are dropping pressure very slowly, but it's not coming from the water pump. I went in there with a mirror very closely and just, being very careful to inspect it carefully because I don't want to be in here again to do this job all over again. But I could tell you 100% that water pump is not leaking. But I can hear some sort of air leak somewhere in this area, right? You can see everything's wet. I've been spraying it with soapy water, and look what I found. Go ahead and spray it right here. See the radiator? That sucks. The owner has two coolant leaks. He had the main big leak coming right off of the water pump, and then he has another tiny one at the radiator. This thing needs a radiator. Well, that sucks. One thing at a time. So we got the leak at the water pump fixed. Pretty confident with that, and I'm happy with it. I just don't want to I don't want to come back for this water pump, okay? Because this is all of this, I don't want to deal with this mess to take all this back apart again. And until you fix the big leak, the small leaks like this that are little tiny little pinholes, they're not really going to show their face until the big leak is sealed up. That's just my opinion, and it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about this. So I'm going to go ahead and finish putting all this back together, let the owner know about the radiator. Alright, so everything is put back together. Got the new serpentine belt on it, completely filled it up with Dexcool, as you can see. Reconnected the battery, and I already tested the car. It does start. Everything's put back together. So now it's just a matter of bleeding the system, get the air out, make sure we get heat inside of the cabin. '02 Chevy Tahoe here. Last night we just looked at that Chevy Traverse, and today we have this Tahoe. Kind of like the same issue. The owner's losing coolant. He said his heat is stopping. He keeps having to add coolant, he says, but he doesn't notice any antifreeze on the ground. So I'm like, all right, maybe there is an internal leak somewhere. I don't know. So as you can see, I put the pressure tester on the coolant tank right there, and I didn't pump it all the way up. I just gave it a few hits, and that's good enough. Just a little quickie. And it's very clear that there is something dripping off of this truck. You can see it back there. Alright, so maybe the owner just doesn't notice it, but it is definitely leaking externally. So get a better shot of it right here. Alright, so let me figure out what's causing this. I get to use my new tool for the first time. Pretty sweet. Alright, so did not take long to find a leak on this one. It's actually super common for these things to leak coolant, and you can see it dripping right there onto they typically leak onto the ignition coil right there. See it dripping? This coolant pipe, I don't even want to touch it because these things are so brittle that as soon as you touch them, they just snap off. So I'm not going to open up this can of worms. I'm just going to let the owner know on what's leaking, and then we could go ahead and order the part before we start messing with it and it actually breaks. A Dorman part from AutoZone. And here goes the old one. As you can see, came off in pieces only because I couldn't figure out no other way to get it off. Everything's like stuck in place, so to try to take it off the way it's supposed to come off doesn't really work all that well. So I had to resort to destroying it. But the new part is now installed. You can see it right there. It's the white piece. Alright, made sure to clean up all the connections on any part that was on the car because it was like a dried up coolant on it and just gunk and stuff like that. And made sure to spray everything down with silicone spray before I connected everything to make sure the O-rings don't get pinched or rolled or anything like that. So it looks like it went on pretty good. I'm just gonna go ahead and fill up the system now with Dexcool and do another pressure test. I got the system filled with Dexcool. As you can see, I already got it pressurized. And the good news is I don't see anything dripping from over here. Okay, so looks pretty good to me, and we are holding pressure, so that's good. I'm just gonna let this sit for a few more minutes, completely top off the system and bleed it out, make sure we get heat out the dash, and that'll be it for this one. Thing the owner wanted me to look at on this Tahoe is there's a belt squeal, right? So let me go ahead and put my glove on. Remember, kids, no glove, no love. All right, so as you can see, I got the serpentine belt off, and it's the alternator. Let's see if you guys can hear this. So you can imagine with the tension of the belt on it and this thing spinning very quickly, it makes a pretty good amount of noise coming from it. Now the thing is, this is a new alternator that we just put on, I want to say maybe a year ago or less than that. And the first alternator was replaced because of the same issue. It still worked, it was doing what it had to do, but it had noise coming from it just like this one. So we replaced it. It's a, I believe it's a remanufactured one from AutoZone, but we're back at square one. It's doing the same exact thing as the old one. So it still works, it's still charging, but it's making noise. And if he wants the noise to go away, he's gonna have to change the alternator once again. Last night I got a 2006 Chevy Tahoe towed in because the owner said the coolant started spilling on the floor while they were driving and the truck started to overheat. So it's another cooling issue. It seems like this is all I'm doing. It's just the theme of this week. But he said it looked like it was coming from the back of the engine, so I already knew what was going on. Super common on these. And it did not take long to find the problem here. You could see that coolant hose right there going to the heater core is actually snapped off. See it right there? So, no pressure testing involved for this one. We just have to get that piece fixed. Alright, so I got the old hose off. No, this piece came off pretty easy. This right here is a freaking nightmare to get off. Easily like 40 minutes right here. That sucks. So the owner dropped off a hose. It's of course aftermarket. It's a dormant part. Now this end on it looks different. You can see it doesn't really have the tabs to release like the original one does. So if it fits and it goes on and it seals, it's gonna suck for the next person that has to come in here, because it looks like this is designed to use one of those tools that come in from the backside to compress the springs in the inside, kind of like on a fuel line. But the thing is, there isn't much space to get back there. Right, so kind of sucks for the next person that would have to come in here to do any type of work on this, which is probably me. I'm probably just shooting myself in the foot right here, but let's see if it fits. Alright, so I got another part here. Owner just dropped this one off, another dormant part, but it looks to be like the correct part this time. You can see this end actually matches up to the piece that came off of the car, so that's good. Here's a pro tip, like we just sent back the first one that didn't fit, is whenever I'm unsure about a part that's gonna fit or not, because it's just kind of sketchy, don't destroy the packaging. I know people got a tendency to just like tear things open. Don't destroy it, because if it doesn't work, you don't want to try to, it just makes it more difficult to return something if the packaging is destroyed. So just like the first one, I wasn't too sure about it, so it's why I grabbed a blade and just cut a neat little slice in here so you could remove it. If it doesn't fit, tape it back up as neat as you can. And the same thing for boxes. Open a box up how it's supposed to be, how it's intended to be opened up. Don't destroy it, because you don't know if you have to return something. Alright, so that's pretty much it. That end is down there. It has a clamp on it. This end is all clipped in, as you can see right there. And with some silicone spray, oh crap, I almost fell. With some silicone spray, everything just slides in like butter. Here I've got a Mitsubishi Outlander, and it's here, same reason as other cars, losing some coolant and overheating. So at least it's not a Chevy, right? So you know the routine. Let's go ahead and pressurize the cooling system and see where this leak is at. Alright, so I pressurized this thing and it is dropping pressure really fast. We have a pretty big leak. can't do it. My one hand job is not strong today. Well, look at this. I thought we had more than one leak because I see that back there. But what's happening is the radiator is actually leaking and it's landing on that cross member right there and just working its way back and then falling off of the car. So we just have, looks to be like a pretty bad busted radiator because the hoses look real good on it. I don't see anything leaking off any of the upper or lower hose, and there's nothing else it could be besides the radiator. It's about a week later and we have this Endeavor back in the garage. We have a new radiator for it. You can see how it's just been dumping. You can see all this is all wet. It is not raining outside or anything, but you can see how it's just been dumping all this coolant out of here. It's crazy. Okay, so we are moving along here. You can see I got a lot of stuff out of the way already. Not too bad of a job except for the rust. Almost every single bolt is rusted in place. Some of them are snapping off, but thankfully the ones that are snapping off doesn't matter. They're getting replaced with the new radiator, so it's not too big of a deal. Initially, it shouldn't be that bad of a job. It's just the rust that's fighting me. But I think this is the only job I'm going to be doing for today. I'm going to look at another car, but I don't think I'm going to be working on it. Today is December 9th, aka my birthday. So I don't want to spend all day in the garage. I'm not trying to get turned up or anything, okay? It's just, I just want to relax. Alright, so as you can see, I got the old radiator out. And looking at the fins here, I don't see signs of antifreeze leaking. But I remember when it was leaking, it looked like it was coming from the bottom right here. So yeah, it wasn't actually like the radiator was damaged or something in the cooling fins. It's more like the crimp on the lower tank just kind of gave out, and that's what was leaking. So the new one looks like it matches up pretty good. Everything looks exactly the same. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pop it in now. Alright, so I got the new radiator installed. As you can see, it's pretty much all buttoned up. I got the fans installed, and I did have to change all of the 10 mil fasteners that hold on the fan shroud because the original ones were just a tad bit too short and they weren't going to work with the new radiator. So I found all of these red painted 10 mils in my little bulk collection, and these actually came off of the CRX, and they were just a perfect length for this fan shroud. So it's nice, bolted down, everything is secure. I even filled up the entire system with coolant, and I wanted to pressurize it to make sure we have no leaks right now before I commit to putting everything back together. And as you can see, we are holding pressure right where I left it. And I checked around the radiator. We have no leaks, no drips, nothing at all. So now I feel pretty confident putting all of this back together, and I know the car is going to be good to go. So let's go ahead and start it up to bleed out the system. Okay. Alright, so it's pretty much up to temperature. As you can see right there, we're getting plenty of nice heat out of the dash here. And this one's just about set. I went ahead and looked underneath the front end, and absolutely no leaks or drips or anything. So this one's pretty much all set. This is another one of those cars, I think I mentioned it. You wanted me to put a thermostat on the car. Just because your car is overheating doesn't always mean it's a thermostat. In fact, in my experience, most times it is not a thermostat. I think the reason why people hope it's a thermostat is because it's like the least expensive option as far as fixing your car, right? No one ever likes to hear, oh, all these hoses need to be replaced, or it needs a heater core, it needs a radiator. Everyone just hopes it's, you know, you got your magic little thermostat that's always gonna fix your car. 2012 or 13 Civic here. Another cooling issue. She said she could kind of smell coolant, and occasionally she has to top it off. So it got dropped off a few hours ago, so everything's nice and cool. I am gonna start with the pressure test. Took the cap off, and that looks to be, it's hard to tell if there's coolant sitting right there or not. Yeah, it kind of looks like it. But before doing anything, I noticed that, looking at the engine, right down there, let me see if I can zoom in. See that right there? That liquid? That is not oil. It's clear like coolant, okay? It's even got a little bit of a green tint to it. So I believe that is coolant, and I'm like, okay, so where is it coming from? Well, if you look up here, look at this mess. What is that? That looked like JB Weld or something on the block.
or like silicone. See that? That whole mess right there, that looks like silicone or JB Weld or something. That's not a good sign. Why is there silicone on this block? I already see a leak right in the area where we have all this silicone. See that trail right there? Well, you see that bolt coming out the block? That's all kind of rusty. Look right beneath it. Now, if we focus on that little trail underneath that bolt, it's hard to pick up on camera, but I could definitely see that fluid flowing out of there. I could see that coolant is slowly coming out of what looks like that bolt. Oh, if we look from the top right here, let me try to zoom in real fast. All right, look at that bolt. That thing is completely covered with silicone. That's crazy. All right, so someone's been in here messing around. I don't know why or what's the reason for all this silicone all around it. Got a long screwdriver here, as you can see, and I am trying to pick at that silicone, but you know what, it doesn't want to move, and it doesn't seem like it's flexible at all. I don't think it's silicone, guys. I think this is JB Weld. And a little bit, like the very corner, let's see if I could get a good shot of this. The very corner of the JB Weld that I can just like manage to get my screwdriver on, every time it moves just a little bit, I could see coolant behind it, like starting to like ooze out. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if this block is cracked somehow and someone just used JB Weld to cover it up and then sell the car, you know what I mean? Honestly, I'm not gonna touch this. I'm not touching this car. There's something sketchy going on here. Someone tried to hide something. So that's it. I'm gonna tell the owner what I found, find out any information about the car, like how long has she had it, the history. You know, maybe it's a new car to her. You know, she just got it. She got it at a deal, and well, that's why you got it at a deal. So I guess that's it for now. If I mess with that JB Weld, right, I go to remove it, just digging around, see what's going on. Let's just assume the block is cracked or something horrible is wrong here. If I create a massive leak that wasn't there before, and now it's my job to try to patch it up and fix it, right? And if it continues to leak, which of course it will, after I try to patch it up, it's gonna be my problem. You know, they're gonna blame me for it. I've had a lot of people tell me, man, you work on a lot of crappy cars. What jobs do you ever turn down? This right here. This is the type of job that I do turn down. Because anyone could already see how this is opening up a can of worms right here. Yep. Perfect example.